Hello, my boys. Welcome back. Part 5, Chapter 43, Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson, Chapter on War. Welcome chat. Hello, everyone in the chat. Tyler, another guy. Jacob Mendez, evening. Bob Alis, hello. Kimberly, glad to see you here. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what the next stretch goal should be. Now that I've done the bookshelf tour, I was kind of just hoping on stretching that out for a couple more, but you guys really went ham that live stream. Nonetheless, let's get into it, my boys. I believe we left off here. So last week we were talking about the Kurd Artanak and his realization on how to stop wars through animal sacrifice. Let me just close this window. Hear less of the birds outside. Oh, actually, I forgot to put my lighting on. Let me just do this real quick. I don't think the lighting changed all that much. Anyway. Ring light was only 20 bucks. Donate and I'll buy a better one. So, Artanak. Yeah, Artanak. It was really interesting because we had this thing where he stopped wars. He stopped the wars via animal sacrifice, but then another Persian Sufi came and wanted to stop the animal sacrifice. And there's this interesting thing that kind of Gurdjieff is teaching us that, like almost like morality, there are different levels. And each one is correct. Like the Persian Sufi looking at the animal sacrifice, he didn't have enough being reason to understand why people were doing that. He just saw, the horror, the torment, and the suffering of the animals and wanted to end it. And of course you would. Anyone would want to. But then that starts the war, and it's like... New beauty mark, what is he looking at? I hit myself in the face at my forklift job. So I just got a little, what is it, a tear tattoo. Now I'm a gangster, bro. Ignore that. Oh, maybe I should put on some makeup and get some foundation. Never mind, honey. So different levels of morality. So of course you'd want to stop animal sacrifice, but then that starts the wars, and it's like, why does it start wars? If you have better understanding of world maintenance and the cosmic laws, then with this better understanding, you can kind of do greater things, because it's like the animal sacrifice was bad, but then there's war, and what comes with war? All of this reciprocal destruction and horror, and he doesn't get into it, but how horrible war can be, what can be done to prisoners of war and all of that kind of stuff and everything. And also the teachings, different schools, all of those things get destroyed in war. Especially in the East, a lot of the Taoist and Buddhist lineages got disconnected because of, the two world wars. There's in Japan, in World War II, there was entire Zen monasteries got hollowed out because you get all the monks, conscripted into the army, and then it's like all these young men, and then the train gets bombed, and then boom, there's a lineage gone. And so you start to lose all of this stuff. So wars need to end. And so with your understanding of world maintenance, Artanak was able to stop the world wars through animal sacrifice, but there's still something higher. Gurdjieff is really giving us the real key to basically end all wars. Originally, why do wars happen is because there needs to be this release of energy so nature finds harmony. Why that doesn't happen anymore is because of, to a degree, it's because of our state, our nature. We no longer fulfill Park Dolg duty. So there's this higher echelon even farther. So it's almost like Gurdjieff is kind of on top of, that meme of different people pointing guns at each other going back, and it's like Gurdjieff is the last guy being like, if only you fulfilled Park Dolg being duty, you would end all war, basically. That would be the ultimate thing. But if you can't do that, if everybody in the earth can't fulfill Park Dolg duty, or if you can't have a society where the majority are fulfilling Park Dolg duty, it just kind of degenerates, and then you begin to have, if not wars, civil wars, And then to stop the wars, you then have to have something else. And it's like the animal sacrifice thing, but then it's like, oh no, then it's like less and less being reason. You may have good intentions. It was just really interesting that he was getting into this. You know, just a little reflection. Hello, hint of shrimp in the chat. And Morgoth is back, I see. Fellow forklifter Chad. You're a pallet penetrator, PP for short. Oh yeah, I love the PP. Now, are there any other means of releasing energy, says Kimberly K. Yes, by fulfilling our park dog being duty, which basically is to be balanced, because we're not really balanced or developed correctly in any way whatsoever. So to develop, maybe it's not even necessarily having objective being reason, not even necessarily having a solar causal body. It's even just having all of the cylinders functioning in an integral way, in a balanced way, where not one is dominating the other, and each one is functioning with its own specific energy. So, you know, the sexual cylinder is specifically working on its hydrogen-12, which apparently Gurdjieff says not many people actually have that going. You know, someone who's chronically addicted to, say, gentleman's specialist literature on the internet, that's someone who's, you could say, their intellectual cylinder is leaching the 12, the sexual hydrogen, and it's just going in their mind all the time, and they're just continuously fantasizing. So kind of like incels, that's their problem. And because they're unbalanced, you know, the cosmic energies don't flow through us. We don't transmute energies properly. We're not proper energies. We're not proper, sorry, engines, factories, antennas of nature. We're disconnected from nature. So it's like, what did he say? There's like, you have to reach the degree of like Mordecai or something. He had some like term. I gotta go through like some of the old recordings we got, like cut them up into shorts properly, re-practice it. Tyler asks, practicing self-awareness equals parked-old duty. No, parked-old duty, it's fulfilled. It's not just practicing self-awareness. Like, I'm quietly attentive to myself, and that's my parked-old being duty. It's like, no, it's like a level you reach, almost, of this integratedness. Not necessarily something to do with higher cylinders or objective being reason, and not necessarily something to do with crystallizing higher being bodies, but it's like kind of one of the first things you got to do, become kind of integrated. And so energies can actually flow through you and also build up within you properly. If you're able to at least do that, that's something. But it's almost like before you actually do the work and, you know, attain higher cylinders and get the being bodies, there's actually a starting line that you have to get to. So this is the thing with spirituality. Everybody thinks they're already a goddess, slay queen, but it's really, and a lot of people, oh, you know, and they do all this and they go and finally, you know, they reach, and it's like, no, you've reached just the starting line. A lot of what people in the New Age movement call awakening and, you know, healing and doing this and that, they're really just making it to the starting line of the real work. Yeah, prerequisites for prerequisites. Howdy, Altuition. Howdy, Cactus. Okay, now that we're all here and I've like rambled for like 10 minutes, let's get into it, boys. Let's get into it, boys and gal. So, my boy, I'm pretty sure this is where we ended off last week. Although the hypothesis put forward in the theory of that uncommon learned Kurd Artanak, Atreyu, very nearly, as I have already told you, approximated to reality. Yet nevertheless, he failed to understand what was most important, namely that the vibrations required by nature, which have to be formed from the radiations issuing from both during their existence as well as from their Raskuanu. So Raskuanu is the process of death. So the sacred Raskuanu is the process of death, energy is released, but also we emit ambient energy at all times. But we like... you emit a ton of energy when you die, and just all escapes out. So we emit during our existence as well as through the process of their Raskuanu, have no significance quantitatively, but only qualitatively. So this is the thing, it's not quantitative, it's qualitative. Hence why, what is it last week? Who was asking that was like, what if we just killed mice? Like 1 billion mice, it wouldn't work because it's not... And he's like, no, but like 1 billion. It's like, no, it's not quantity, it's the quality. This is almost like if you had a being that was like super ultra divine, could they actually just emanate from themselves enough energy to stabilize nature on this planet despite all of us being unbalanced? That would be something crazy. And I don't think that would be really possible, but you know, because we've had people like Ashiata Shayamash come down and they can try and help us, but really we all got to do the work. You all got to chip in. No one's coming to save you. This is the thing about Gurdjieff's work. No one's coming to save you, because plot twist, you got to save yourself. Is it the same for when a baby is born? So birth doesn't release energy. I mean, the process of birth is creation, things coagulating together, and then a new being is born. Out tuition. That's just, you know, and then the process goes as that baby grows up. You know, they emanate ambient energy throughout their life, and it's through death that a large amount is released. The Rascuano. So you're the billions of mice theory. Yeah. Nah, not gonna work, bro. It's qualitative, not quantitative. So it is possible that the Kurd Artenak, and the other important thing here was also, he said that Artenak almost had it was, you know, approximated reality. Like, so this is interesting because it's us humans, even the state that we're in nowadays, as degenerate as we are, as deracinated from our sacred roots, from the Holy Sun Absolute, we can still actually reach a state where we do almost approximate reality. So we can still study and we can still get to an approximation of reality, which is a good thing. It means there's hope. It is possible that the Kurd Artenak, being an unusual terrestrial being, would have understood that also, if he had known the details of the results that had been obtained after those conditions of being existence had been already more or less established on this planet, which were especially created for the three-brained beings arising there by the most holy saint labors of the essence-loving, very saintly Ashiata Shayamash, during that said period, not only did their rate of mortality begin to decline, but what they call their birth rate also began to decline. And so this is so as the our age extends through our development, our birth rate naturally lowers. So it's the holy aristocratic, you know, magical hierarchy with objective being, reason, and causal bodies. They don't actually need to have that many kids. But the degenerate peasant caste who have like no being, reason, and no higher bodies, and who only have a lifespan of 50 years, they will like mate like rabbits and reproduce exponentially. Rats have more loosh than mice, says Morgoth. I see, loosh. I see you've been watching some Robert Monroe, Morgoth. Yeah, no, the whole point isn't the amount. The whole point is the quantity. It's qualitative, not quantitative. If there was one rat or mouse that, like, attained objective being reason, the Rascuano, the loosh, the Askokan that would come out of that rat would be, like, more qualitatively important and satisfying to the harmonics of nature than the billion other mice, so it wouldn't even matter. During that said period, not only did their rate of begin to decline, their birth rate declined because when the three-brained beings there were already existing, more or less as is becoming to three-centered beings, when the radiations issuing from them were yielding vibrations more akin to the vibrations required from them by nature, both for the most common cosmic trogo-auto-egocrat in general and for the maintenance of the moon and Anulios in particular. So the law of the trogo-auto-egocrat is this law of reciprocal nourishment in nature. Everything feeds everything. Think of nature as one musical symphony, and each being is kind of like a note. And this reciprocal feeding are like the tones, semitones in between the notes. That's kind of the essence that he's going for. And then, yes, and also a part of harmonizing nature is also harmonizing the orbit of the moon, and Anulios is the second moon. The invisible, the small, because it's smaller moon, Anulios. In particular, then great nature did not fail to adapt herself to the diminishing of their birth rate, the more so as in recent times the need for the said vibrations for the maintenance of the existence of the planet moon had to be diminished. The aspect of this fundamental question regarding the significance of the sense and aim of the existence of your favorites is so important for the understanding of a great deal that proceeds here on the earth. And by the way, also of the question touching the causes of war. Remember, this is the chapter on war. We went through all of this to talk about different levels of war, that I consider it necessary to refer to it once more. Very interesting. Yes. Oh, this is interesting. Our tuition asks, birth rates as it stands are falling off a cliff for so many countries. What does that imply in regards to this? Is it over for some demographics if nothing changes? Nah. There's just an adjustment. Like, I don't see... Like, some of it can be planned, some of it can be unplanned, but in the end, nature always seeks harmony. Always seeks to find a level. So it means she's making an adjustment. I mean, we haven't had, you know, big, large-scale total world war in a little while. So there needs to be an adjustment somehow. I first learned that the destiny of beings arising on this planet of yours is chiefly to elaborate by means of the process of their existence the vibrations required by nature for the maintenance of those former parts of the planet, now called Moon and Anulios. So by the way, this is the meaning of life for humans. We are here as vibratory machines. I say factory because what goes into a factory is like a resource, and what comes out is a product. What comes into us is a type of energy, and what comes out is another type of energy. We've transformed it. We've transformed, you know, our food into a skoken that then harmonizes nature and helps the universe maintain the orbits of the moon. This is the reason for our being on Earth. That's what we are. We're a part of a machine of nature. And if we don't want to be that, you can either, you know, unalive yourself, or you can develop yourself in accordance with certain cosmic laws or by understanding them, and develop yourself into another being on another rung of the ladder. You can either move up or down. Those are the only two choices. You're not allowed to get off the ride. You can only go up and down. You can try to get off the ride, but then you'll just be deposited into another body. There's no escape. There's no escape from the wheel. That's the true horror. If you truly understood the terror of reincarnation and what that would imply, you would not look at it in this, rosy-eyed tinted glasses that the New Age have, where they just kind of go, oh, you know, reincarnation, I was Cleopatra in a past life. It's like, no, you can never escape. You can never escape. You try to escape, you'll just get reincarnated, bruh. Your memories will get erased and you'll get reincarnated. It's actually terrifying. So I'm just reading some of the chats there. If you want to play the game, you got to make it yours. That's what you got to do. You got to learn the rules of the game so you can play it correctly. And you don't necessarily need to win. You just need to... You just gotta get to that other rung. You got to get to another octave. It's not just coming back to the beginning. You come back to do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, si, and then you come to do again. But the do is on another octave. You are in a different place. That's what you don't see when it's a circle. It's not a circle, it's a spiral. None of this, oh, you just return to the other, there is no path. You just return to the beginning again. No, wrong. There is a path, there is development. Something qualitatively changes. Now, when do you remember? I became worthy personally to converse for the second time with his conformity, the then still angel, but now archangel Luisos. This is interesting. We haven't heard of Luisos in a long time. His conformity then told me that although the movements of both former parts of the planet Earth were now already finally regulated with the general harmony of movement, and that every kind of apprehension of some or other surprise in the near future had absolutely vanished, yet to avoid any possible complications, because things can still happen, in the distant future, it had been explicitly decided by the Most High, most sacred individuals to actualize the corresponding on the planet for the formation of what is called the sacred Askoken. Oh baby, give me that Askoken, baby. Another guy, no, so another guy who asked about the Fool, it's like, no, they were, in the chat, they were talking about the tarot cards. Yeah, music theory is hard, but Gurdjieff integrates it really interestingly into his work. But maybe I should make some videos on it. Nonetheless, so that this sacred cosmic substance required for the maintenance of that planet's former parts might continuously issue from that planet. So the Askoken is that sacred substance that is required for the maintenance of planets and parts of planets. And it issues from the planet and it issues from us. And further, His Highness also explained that this cosmic substance, the sacred Askoken, exists in general in the universe, chiefly blended with the substances abstruse and helkudonis. So we got a trinity here. We got a holy, affirming, denying, and reconciling. And hence that this sacred substance Askoken, in order to become vivifying for such a maintenance, must first be freed from the said sacred substances abstruse and helkudonis. Very interesting. Wesley 1 mentioning the Georgia Guidestones again. Yeah, Gurdjieff doesn't promote, population limiting for the Earth. He just says there's a harmonic thing that naturally happens if things are in their ordinary place. He doesn't, he's not going to poison the food to keep the population at a certain level. That he would just see that as dumb. Like, Gurdjieff would look at it, all of this other stuff that our politicians are basically all Hasnamusans. All Hasnamusans, for reals. Can't wait till the year 2030 to watch it. Hey man, I'll produce some new content soon. To tell the truth, my boy, I did not at once clearly understand all that he then said, and it was only later that I came to understand it all clearly, when, during my studies of the fundamental cosmic laws, I learned that these sacred substances, abstruse and helkudonis, are just those substances by which the higher being bodies of three-brained beings, namely the body Kesdjan and the body of the soul, are in general formed and perfected. Very interesting. When I learned that the separation of the sacred Askoken from the said sacred substances proceeds in general when the beings on whatever planet it might be transubstantiate the sacred substances abstruse and helkudonis in themselves for the forming and perfecting of their higher bodies by means of conscious labor and intentional sufferings. So there's this substance and it's mixed together. Gurgy-burgy. There's this mixture of these three substances, Askoken, abstruse, and helkudonis. And it seems like Askoken is the life force for our planetary body. Abstruse and helkudonis are the life force and materials that our higher being bodies are made out of. And when they're mixed together, the universe can't use the Askoken for its maintenance. So it comes into humans, and we separate those substances, and that process creates higher being bodies, because then you have the abstruse crystallizing into our astral body, and the helkudonis crystallizing into a causal body. And then when we die, our physical body dies, and the Askoken is naturally released, or the Askoken can naturally be released through our life normally. But if we don't do that process, it stays mixed within us, and we don't, maybe we only emanate a little Skoken, and or qualitatively a little Skoken compared to someone who actually does the work. So only through conscious labors and intentional sufferings does this process of this dividing of these elements, this dissolving of these elements into its constituent parts, into these almost, it's not just prima materia, it's like these three prima materias, and then the Skoken can be used by the nature. So, and then those other parts that nature doesn't need, we can use to then become immortal. That's very interesting. That's really interesting. It's all coming together, guys. It's all coming together. And when I had become interested in these favorites of yours, and had begun to observe and to study their strange psyche, only then did I fully understand to which end both great nature herself and the most high and most saintly individuals always patiently adapt themselves to everything. And concerning this, the following personal opinion was formed in me. What was your opinion, Bilzy? What was the opinion? That if these favorites of yours would at least properly ponder over this and serve nature honestly in this respect, then perhaps their being self-perfecting might as a consequence proceed automatically, even without the participation of their consciousness. So this is interesting as well. Can you crystallize higher being bodies unconsciously by accident? That's something that's an interesting question. Like, can you lay down a code of ethics that if you live by, you're just automatically, it crystallizes within yourself? This is a question that I've had. Because to me, it's like, you got to be awake. Crystallizing a higher being body is also crystallizing your, your kind of your consciousness. It would be like, imagine, Michelangelo making David, chiseling David out of the granite. We're creating a higher being body through our intentional works, through our intentional sufferings and conscious labors. But can you imagine Michelangelo chiseling, David out of the granite while he was blindfolded? That would seem like another level. And it's just kind of like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, so is there an unconscious and a conscious evolution? And it's like, which one's better? For me, I want to be conscious. I want to be agnostic. I want to actually consciously understand what's happening. And it's like, oh, what if you're just, unconscious and you just live a good life? What about the good people? Like, maybe, but don't you dare call yourself a Gnostic then. You're not Gnostic at all. You don't know anything. If you don't experience something, then you don't know. You only know things you experience. If you don't experience it, then you don't know. Then therefore, via definition, very definition, you're not a Gnostic. But let's see what he says. Let's see what he says. So, and this is he saying this is a truth, or is he just saying, like, could this be a possibility? So, as a consequence, proceed automatically, even without the participation of their consciousness, and in any case, the poor nature of their ill-fated planet would also not have to puff and blow in order to adapt herself to remain within the common cosmic harmony. So our planet really tries hard to harmonize. We make it hard for poor Mother Nature. We make it so hard. I think it's like, this is the hope for the majority. Majority of people can't do it consciously. And so maybe they kind of need a set of ethics so it proceeds in them automatically. But unfortunately for everything existing in the megalocosmos, so let's see what he says. There is no honesty in your favorites, even in respect to the fulfillment of their duties to nature. Not even to that nature to which, strictly speaking, they owe their very existence. We're on borrowed time. We're on borrowed time. Our body isn't our body. We borrowed this body from nature for our work, and we're not even paying her back. Our tithe for our existence, for our nature, is to give back to nature, a little bit of a skoken, so she doesn't have to huff and blow all the time. But we don't give back to Mother Nature. We just selfishly take and take and take. Another guy says, how could you not be aware of such changes? If you need to be aware. Exactly, that's my question. It's like, I really have, some problems with the unconscious development of higher forces within people. Or that idea. Nulu says, Hey, there was a big study in February where they got participants to download an app blocking the internet and smartphones for 2 weeks. Results were subjective. Well-being and cognition improved. Is the internet a giant egregor? I mean, yes, but the fact that they turned it off and people didn't participate in, you know, mass psychosis and improve their well-being is obvious as well. Because the whole thing is like, oh, you gotta not participate in egregors. No, you would participate in egregors just by being around people. It's just that they disconnected from one egregor and went to a more healthy one. Nature herself is not an egregor as well. That's actually one other thing I should say. Egregors are not produced by nature. Egregors are produced by us. As regards the absence of honesty in your favorites in the fulfillment of their duty towards nature, I have just now remembered a very wise sentence of our incomparable teacher Mullah Nassereddin, which in the present case justifies its hidden meaning. He once said, "Plague and cholera are at any rate less ignoble than human honesty, since people with a conscience can at least live at peace with them." That's interesting. Oh. You read the book on Gregor's another guy. Good. It's a good intro book. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this Mullah Nassereddin phrase, though. Plagues and cholera are at any rate less ignoble than human honesty. So human honesty is... Wait, less ignoble... He did a double negative there on me, bro. Hold on a second. Oh my god. Are less noble, less ignoble. So plague and cholera are better than human honesty, since people with a conscience can at least live in peace with them. So he's saying people with a conscience have a harder time being honest than living with cholera. So cholera, for those who don't know, that's if you get cholera, your body expels liquids, so you just constantly vomit and have diarrhea, and that's how you die when you have cholera. Cholera doesn't actually kill you. You just dehydrate because you constantly vomit all the time and your organs shut down from dehydration. It's a really bad way to go. But it's like he's literally saying it's easier for someone with a conscience to live with cholera than to be honest, or for humans to be honest. That's an interesting phrase, a very extreme Mullah Nassereddin phrase. Why does this book make your brain hurt, Kimberly? It makes all of our brains hurt. But together. It's hurting because it's like, you know, you're lifting a weight. When you weight lift, that hurts your muscles. But it's good for the muscles, you know? This is like... This is reading Beelzebub's tales is like deadlifting for the intellect. It hurts so good. Yeah, people can't handle the truth. That's what we're getting to. That's what we're getting to here. It's a you know, reading Beelzebub's tales is like, you know when people like deadlift, but then they wrap chains to them, and then they put like, you know, kettlebells on the chains, and they're like, ah, and they're like standing on a skateboard while like, you know, holding another dumbbell with their teeth. That's what reading Beelzebub's is, basically. And so, my dear Hassian, not my dear boys, he's talking directly to Hassian. That's interesting, because when he's saying, and so my boys, it's almost like he's talking to us, but when he's talking to Hassian directly, but Hassian is kind of us as well. I know, I think poop programming is better. Oh, Wesley, sorry. Now, when it appeared that the instinctive need for conscious labor and intentional suffering in order to be able to take in and transmute, because remember, this used to be instinctual in us, but it changed. In themselves, the sacred substances abstruse and helk and thereby to liberate the sacred Askoken for the maintenance of the moon and Anulios, had finally disappeared from the psyche of your favorites. Then great nature herself was constrained to adapt herself to extract this sacred substance by other means, one of which is precisely that periodic, terrifying process there of reciprocal destruction. So nature herself psychically makes humans go to war so that we release a Skokin, because that's the only way she can get it. She needs the Skokin for her maintenance. She doesn't make us go to war because she likes it. She makes us go to war because she needs it. But if we were to obey our true instincts, which would be to do say, conscious labors, the conscious labors itself would untangle the Skokin from the abstruse and helcdonus, and we'd be able to feed nature properly, but we don't. We lost that instinct. Does nature affect the egregores of nations to incite wars? Possibly, yeah. I mean, the egregores, in a sense, would also kind of be Skokin harvesters as well. So they want a little bit of that Skokin as well, you know. They want that. They want that. They want that good stuff, you know what I'm saying? After a while, egregores just want that life force from humans. That's why there's like, if you are into occultism and you hear about certain secret societies, there's this thing with, not the founders, but the leaders of certain lodges die weirdly. Like, I remember a guy saying, Builders of Attidom, I always thought was, quite more like a white lodge. Paul Foster Case was a cool guy. But I heard from one guy that there's like a branch of Builders of Attidom where like whoever's at top, like the Grand Master is, they always like die of liver failure or liver cancer in their like mid-50s. So they die kind of like quite early. Like, people get there, they grind, they really enjoy it. And then like mid-50s, mid-60s, they all get like a rare liver cancer and just die. And I know in the book Egregores, he also mentions something like this, but this is also something I literally heard from another guy who was talking about Builders of Attidom. And it's like, it does happen. It's like the egregore of a kind of place will just start leeching the life force of people. Hence why it's better to just, I always say, I always love that William Blake quote. It's, I needed to create a system of my own before risk being enslaved by another man's. And there's more to it. It's like, you get into a esotericism, you learn a system, but in the end, to master a system implies that you've done it enough, that you've found the principles in it and understood the principles behind the system. So all of the practices are derived from the theoretical structures of a system, that you've able to like grasp the principles within your being mentation, and you're able to actually strip back and dissolve the system and recreate it to kind of suit your own means. And then you do certain practices in a particular way that aid you, but if you were to give that practice to someone else, it wouldn't necessarily work. But you can do that because you have that understanding. Nulu is just asking something about egregores and archetypes. Egregores and archetypes are different things. Archetypes are more eternal kind of structures. Think of like, if you think of the psychic mental world, think of archetypes as like the tectonic plates. Like, archetypes do actually change over time. They're not like static platonic forms. They're like the tectonic plates that then egregore and psychic structures are built on top of. So the archetypes are like the folkloric, mythological foundations, the tectonic plates that the egregores and the psychic kind of structures are built on. Better to be a slime man. Better to be a slime man indeed, Wesley. Indeed. Man, I really got to get another Q&A going. Oh, another guy asked, it's not just a matter of like being consumed by their own egregore, like in orders of the top brass would have control over it, but also be influenced by it too, no? So one would need to be aware of that, yeah. And so that's just it. It's like, it's not like necessarily everybody in the society is getting wrecked by an egregore. It's more like the main guy, when he gets into that position, the egregore leeches from him, but kind of gives him a little bit of energy. So he's more kind of energized, and he can do the rituals, and there's just something else. When Dave's in doing the ritual, it's just different from when any of the other teachers do it. It's like, that's the guy. He kind of pays a price for that. Magnus Reardon asks, can I ask for your perspective on something I'm struggling related to esoteric teachings? Sure, but let me get another page in here while we're talking. Here, for the correct valuation of your contemporary favorites, it will be apropos to remind you that after the action of the organ Kunda buffer had been destroyed in the three-brained beings of your planet, for the first generations very soon learned that a certain cosmic substance had to be transformed through them, pardon me, and that their assistance in this transformation was one of their chief being duties. Do you remember I have told you that the beings of the continent Atlantis even considered this being duty of theirs as sacred and called it Amarlos, which in their language means help to the moon. We must help the moon. We need to help the moon by doing rituals to the moon. The three-brained beings of the continent Atlantis, and they saw this as a sacred duty. They didn't hate them. They didn't hate it like, oh man, I gotta feed the moon. Oh. It's like, no, do conscious works and intentional sufferings. The three-brained beings of the continent Atlantis of that period, namely the period then called the Samliosian civilization. That's interesting. So, in their own language, the Atlantean civilization called themselves the Samliosian civilization. Even devised and very strictly practiced certain customs. The local customs. You mustn't go against the local customs. That greatly contributed to the fulfillment of those being duties as productively as possible. The beings of the continent Atlantis even very wisely and expediently devised the fulfillment of these two being duties, namely the duty of perfecting their higher bodies and the duty of serving the most great cosmic Trogger Auto Egocrat by uniting them into one and performing them simultaneously. So how did they do that? I want to do that. I want to crystallize higher being bodies and all of that stuff. Come on, man. Anyway, what are we talking about here? Keep ranting. 10 pages to go. Yeah. Okay, you guys talk in the chat. I'm gonna keep going. I gotta rant less, unlock more Gurdjieff wisdom. Well, Fine Free says, I wanted to say, when I did your New Year Tarot recommendation format, it's been very accurate and has even been reflected in my usual new moon forecasts. Cards returning, very fun. Nice. Thanks, Fine Free. Yeah, that was a fun little yearly tarot little live stream we did. But anyway, let's get back to our... Oh, hello. Okay, so Magnus asked his question. I'm curious about your perspective on the cycle I experience with esoteric teachings. Initial enthusiasm, struggle implementing them, sudden dismissal, then returning later. I've done it a lot of times. I mean, we've all done it a lot of times, Magnus. We've all done it. The problem is like kind of crystallization. We need to kind of find something that's real in a sense. That's why I've moved away from imagination and visualizations practices, because it never felt like anything real was crystallized. Like, I kind of got results, but as I kind of describe it, it's like if you imagine like there's this level of like depth, imagination and visualization, you know, pentagram rituals, imagining this and that, it's almost like you're building a structure on top of the surface and then spinning around in the structure, and then if you do something else, this dissipates and you lose all your progress. Whereas what I want to do is I want to go into the deep and change something real that's then permanent. That's what I want. That's what I think we all want, really. We may say it in different ways, but it's like a lot of... And what is that? What is that? There's the crystallize of the higher being body, and there's the accessing of certain higher faculties within us, higher cylinders, the holy guardian angel, which you could say is an expression of that. Those things are the things we're trying to reach. And so it's like, for me, I would say that kind of thing is natural, because it's almost like the disillusionment you feel in teachings is natural. I think if you're not kind of feeling disillusionment, there may be if you're not feeling disillusionment, there may be delusion. Like, that may actually be a problem. If you feel disillusioned, relax, because it's like, oh no, you're on the right track almost. That's how I kind of see it. It's like you get disillusioned with something, well, that means, you know, because I've done practices where it's like, you know, you got to kind of have a little bit of faith to do them. You know, and I've kept it going, and then I've just woken up one day, and it's not that I woke up and was like, I don't want to do it anymore. I woke up and I was like, it's not working. I need to find something. It's like, and that's, if I disobeyed that feeling, I would be disobeying my intuition. And that's the more kind of thing, it's like, you know, that, in a sense, what did that practice do? It may not have done what it said it was doing, but it got me connected to my intuition, because my intuition told me to stop doing the practice. So it's this, you know, it's that kind of thing. I think even though it can be disillusioning, I think it's a good thing, because it's like you're trying to find something real. And I don't think one guy's got it. I think Gurdjieff is more kind of correct in his analysis that there may have been something real at one point, but it's been fractured into all these different places, and you kind of gotta be a generalist to bring it all kind of together. And it's hard, because I think you should at least participate in one system. You should find a system that you feel comfortable in to participate to the degree that you can spend many years in it, because then that gives you that skill, that ability to really hone into it and peel back and find the principles, because you don't want to be surface level. So yeah, I don't know, I'm just going off on like little tangents there. I hope that, you know, answered your question, Magnus. Anyway, let's see if we can get in to crystallizing higher being bodies and fulfilling the most great cosmic trogger auto-egocratic principle all at the same time, like the Atlanteans did. The Atlanteans just seem like giga-chads, bro. Let's see how did they do this? How did they do this Atlantean magic? And this union, they organized in the following way. In every populated locality, and even in separate districts of these localities, 3 very substantial, indispensable special buildings were erected there. One for beings of the male sex was called... Bruh, come on, man. Come on, what the hell is this? Oh, so that's an A and a guru. And then you go or into a K. Crostini. A guru crostini. The boys get their crostinis are gurued. The second building, especially for beings of the female sex, was called the Gyne Crostini. Okay. The Gin, how do you say that? Gyne or Gin? G or J? Is it a GIF or is it a GIF? Gin Crostini. And the third, for such beings as were then called the middle sex. This sacred building was called Anor Pari Unikima. So men, women, and trans people have their own bathrooms in Atlantis. The first 2 of these substantial buildings were then considered sacred by beings of the continent Atlantis. And these buildings were, for them, the same as their temples, churches, and chapels. So they were sacred, almost temples for men and temples for women. Atlanteans woke much? Yeah, I know, right, Marshall? And other sacred places are for the contemporary beings of the earth. Also, he's just saying they're as sacred as temples and chapels or other places for... I don't know, what are sacred places for us? Banks? When I descended for the first time on the planet and was on the continent Atlantis, I personally visited certain of these buildings, and at that time became very well acquainted with their purpose. In the male temples, yes, tell us, Gurdjieff. In the Agorokrostinis, beings of the male sex of the given locality or of the given district performed in turn corresponding mysteries. This is sounding pretty gay, bro. Let's see what he says. While in the same state called self-remembering. So everybody, all the boys would get together and self-remember together in a circle. No, just kidding. Let's see what they say. Let's see what he does. The beings of the continent Atlantis had a definite notion that beings of the male sex are sources of active manifestation, and hence in their Agorocrostini, They gave themselves up to active and conscious contemplation the whole time, and in this state performed these corresponding sacred mysteries, so that there should be transubstantiated in them the sacred substances, abstruse dones and helc dones. So I don't know. So it just seems like they get a bunch of guys in a room, everyone self-remembers and contemplates. Gamers. Magic the Gathering. Seems interesting. Okay. But it doesn't say they talk. It doesn't say they discussed philosophy. It just says, it's almost like they would come together and read a chapter of Beelzebub's Tales, and then everyone would just think about it. But it has to be more than that. It has to be... it has to be more than that. So it's not just thinking, it's contemplating. And what are they contemplating? Sacred mysteries. Well, let's see. Let's keep going. Let's see what he says. And they did this deliberately and with full consciousness, in order that this certain sacred substance liberated in them and issuing through their radiations in further vivifyingness should become the active part of the sacred law of that Holy Trinity. So this is very interesting. So what does this imply? This implies that one way to properly fulfill Parktog duty and release a Skoken into the atmosphere is through self-remembering. Through choosing a time of your day, not just to like walk around self-remembering, like you just need to Eckhart Tolle, be aware. It's not just that, it's like you choose a time and you sit in a room and you self-remember. Self-remembering releases a Skoken into the atmosphere. But self-remembering is different from contemplation. Or can you get into a state of self-remembering and then contemplate? Okay, let's see what the ladies do now. In the sacred gynococcrostini, built for the beings of the female sex, each of these beings was obliged at certain periods, namely, at those periods which contemporary beings call menstruation, hello! So I made that joke, but it came true. To stay without leaving. So this was like a girl retreat. So in the gynococcrostinis, like when women would, you know, be on their period, they would go there and have like girl retreats and just eat chocolate together. That's crazy. That's Atlantean. That's the Atlanteans knew what was up, bro. Atlanteans knew what was up. To stay without leaving. Moreover, the women acknowledging themselves to be passive beings had to be the whole time of their stay there only passive, in order that the vibrations issuing from their radiation should serve as the passive part of that same sacred law for their further vivifyingness. So they were literally just like, no, just don't do anything, just relax, just go retreat, just gonna like lie down, here's some chocolate, here's your iPad. Bruh. So it like basically once a month in Atlantis, all women were allowed to just go on vacation for a week into a place with no men. No men were allowed there, and they were just allowed to relax, like spa day with the girls. That's crazy. Government funded. This is crazy. And the boys don't get that. The boys have to be philosophical and self-remember. And hence, they passed their whole time in these gynococcrostini in a state of complete passivity, trying consciously not to think about anything. And again, just don't think about anything. Just literally relax. That's crazy. How far we've fallen. We just want to... Now it's like, women, you get to the workplace. What's that? No overtime leave. Can any women do this now, asks Tyler. Well, there's only one way to find out. Girl retreats. Atlantean girl retreats. With this aim in view, they tried to have no active experiences during their monthly states, and in order that thoughts flowing by association should not hinder them from concentrating, everything was arranged so that their thoughts would be directed the whole time to wishing well to their present or future children. So kind of like almost like a meta meditation or a Vipassana retreat. So women were just taken to like a really relaxing Vipassana retreat. Everything was just done for them. just cooking, just chilling out. Man, crazy. And as regards the third kind of building of the beings of that time, which were called Anoroparionikima, as I already told you, the beings there, called the third sex, liberals, were for whom these buildings were erected. Al-Mullah Nasruddin would call misconceptions, or beings who are neither one nor the other, liberals. Among these middle sex beings were beings both of male and female sex. Oh, so this is the old middle sex is literally people who are then homosexual then. Okay, so homosexuality was alive in Atlantis. Confirmed. Gurdjieff confirmed. Oh my god. These were beings who, for various reasons, already lacked the possibility either of perfecting themselves or serving nature. Oof. Homosexuality confirmed, but also, according to Gurdjieff, if you're a homosexual, you can't perfect yourself or serve nature. They were, as is said in a saying of our same Mullah Nasruddin, neither a candle for the angel nor a poker for the devil. Oh, so he's not saying they're Satanists. He's not saying gay people bad. He's just saying, yeah, neutral. Neutral. He's just saying neutral. Yeah, it's not a positive force, it's not a negative force. Just let them do art. Yeah, Gurdjieff decoded here. Oof, oof. So, but let's see what they do in the, what is it called? Anoroparionikima. Let's see, what do they do? What do they do here? Those beings of the male sex were put into these houses for a certain time, who for some reason or other were already entirely deprived of their possibility of ever consciously contemplating. Well, gay people can't self-remember? And of the number of the beings of the female sex, those were placed in them who generally either did not menstruate at all. Okay, so women who were barren. Ah. Or in whom menstruation occurred abnormally. Okay. Likewise, those who in the sense of their sexual desires became transformed at certain periods into, as it is said there, what the hell is this? Too many vowels. Knaniomeni, or as our dear Mullah would say, into veritable mares in the spring. Also, people who are sex obsessed. So people who are sex addicts. So gay people, people who are asexual, women who are barren, and people who are sex addicts completely uncontrollably were all put in one place. We're all basically, you're no longer male or female, you're the third sex. That's really interesting. Okay. Okay. And what did they do in the third space? Among the beings then on the... How did the Atlanteans deal with this? Among the beings then on the continent Atlantis, conceptions, I thought he was going to say corruptions. Yeah, this is quite a party. What's happening in the party villa in the third space? And also, he said this is a temple, so it's still a sacred space. What do they do in their sacred space? Conceptions of several definite, very peculiar symptoms were current, according to which the given beings were recognized and confined in the Anoroparionikima. And these symptoms were as follows. 1. If a being believed any kind of balderdash, so also... Wait, insane people? Okay, hold on. Any kind of balderdash, so really gullible people? So I guess flat earthers were also put in there. 2. If a being began to prove to others anything about which he himself knew nothing whatsoever, or was not sure of. So basically, like, nah man, it's totally true, and it's like, now this movie sucks, and they've never actually seen the movie. Guys like that were also put in here. Lol. If a being failed to keep his word or honor, or took his oath in vain, liars were also put in here. And finally, if there appeared in any being tendencies to spy upon the others and to be occupied with Keef. What's Keef? Okay, and finally, any tendencies to spy upon others, so voyeurs, were also put in here. I don't know what Keef is. What is that? Is that actually... Wait, is that another term for Jorkinit? That may be a term for Jorkinit. We'll see what he says. But the most conclusive symptom of all was when that property appeared in somebody which was then called Moyusul, and which contemporary beings already consider an illness called hemorrhoids. What? So if you got hemorrhoids, you got to go to the third place. This is wild, Gurdjieff, bro. What's going on in this place? In these Anoru Parion Ikima, I think it's like you just have to be 100% mentally healthy and stable to be in either the male or female space, and if you weren't, for any reason whatsoever, you just got sent to the third place, the neutral spot. Yeah, so basically all of humanity is in the third space, and there's very few people operating with true male or female energy. Jesus Christ. Oh my god, what a world. Beings of this kind were obliged to remain without stirring from them during those periods indicated by the surrounding beings, but they were under no compulsion to do anything, but existed as they liked. In regard to them there was only one aim, that they neither met nor spoke with normal beings of the given locality. So they just sit around? What's going on? Such beings were then confined in these buildings. I know this sounds like a bad idea. You're just getting everyone crazy and putting them together. Aren't they just going to get, like, crazier? Like, put all the femboys and the furries in one room and it's just going to get weird. Indeed, Akash. Indeed. According to the notions, then, they, at certain periods of the month, thanks to these various taints of theirs, inferred by their radiations, with the quiet and regular existence, by the surrounding beings, yes indeed, my dear boy, beings of the later period, of the existence of the continent Atlantis had already many very good customs for normal being existence, but as regards the contemporary beings of your planet, one can only pity them, because owing to the second great calamity to their ill-fated planet, the said continent, with everything upon it, entered into the planet, and with it there disappeared also all those good customs for ordinary existence, which had gradually during long centuries entered into the process of their ordinary existence. Oof. After the continent of Atlantis had perished, the custom was again on the point of being re-established among three-brained beings there, of having special constructions similar to those of which I have just told you for the process of ordinary being existence. Magnus says, gave me $5. Thank you, Magnus. Thanks for your input. Do you have any recommendations for a Westerner who's drawn more towards Eastern tradition, i.e. yoga or Buddhism? Yeah, I've gotten more and more black-pilled about Buddhism over time. I think the Buddhist saints, especially Nagarjuna, definitely had some stuff going for him, but Eastern traditions, I think Taoism may be the most suited to a Westerner, funnily enough, out of all of it. Look, Raja Yoga's still based. Raja Yoga's still based. I would say, you know, look up, and it's hard because there's so much trash with Raja Yoga now as well. Those systems, a lot of those systems are more about using the microcosm to perfect the microcosm. And that's, you know, that's where I'm kind of heading as well, but it's like, whereas in the West, there seems to be a tendency to work with the macrocosm to then have an effect on the microcosm. You do have a Raja Yoga book. Which one is it though? Is it the Ramacharaka one? Because that one was doggy doo-doo. Wasn't good at all. Yeah, another guy, Comprehensive Guide to Taoist Nigong that's a great book. That's a great book. Working internally with energies, I would actually put highly up there, because once again, I'm anti-imagination, anti-visualization. And it's like this thing of, how do you become less delusional? We'll work with something real. That's why I think something more somatic, the kind of feeling in the body and trying to connect your consciousness to the body and then manipulate the energies in the body. You've got a body, you may as well work with it. So I don't really like visualization work. That's why I tend to kind of I've moved away from Tibetan Buddhism. Even some of the more esoteric Theravadan forest tradition. And I mean, Chan Buddhism, I don't know, the esoteric parts of it just kind of seem like Taoism anyway. So you may as well just, you know, look up some Taoist Neigong. But keep in mind what the process is Qigong, Neigong, and Nidan. Nidan is Taoist alchemy, but that is done once you have a Dantian that's full. So most people don't have a Dantian that's full. Most people don't even have a Dantian. The Dantian needs to be filled. Most people work off fumes. There's just fumes in their Dantian. But you need to fill it, and the process to fill it is the Neigong process, and it's a process of like, you know, you fill it, and eventually you feel like a pressure, and then eventually you feel like a squeezing, and then a pulsing, and then maybe it's like a heat there, and then electricity, and kind of, there's these different sensations that arise. And it's not that you're trying to create the sensations, you visualize a fire there. It's that these sensations arise as an effect of your practice, as the Neigong practice. And it's like, so as an effect of Neigong, which is the process, and then how do you do the process? That's Qigong. Qigong is a set of tools that should move you forward along the process of Neigong, and then once you've attained the Dantian, then you start doing Neidan, which then leads you to something that actually may be real. I like Nagarjuna, I like yoga, but I really... anything that's just like, visualize yourself as an immortal, you know, being, you know, you're a being made of crystal and you're transparent and filled with fire, and it's just like, you can visualize that all day long. You're not gonna make fantasy into a reality. Check out Alan Watts stuff. He's a good intro, I guess. Are there any Westerners you find that hit the same points? Look, comprehensive guide to comprehensive Taoist guide to Neigong. What is it called? Damo Mitchell. He's great. He's good. You can check him out. Do you have any Western philosophy that hit the same points as Eastern philosophy? Yeah. I mean, Gnosticism, Hermeticism, and Kabbalah, they're all different. They all rely on a Neoplatonic backbone, and that Neoplatonic backbone, Neoplatonism is literally Western Vedanta. Vedantic philosophy is just Eastern Neoplatonism. Plotinus and Shankara are like the same person. I swear to God. So there is, you know, people really don't like perennialism nowadays because they see it as something almost like right-wing, and are like, oh, you're colonizing, colonizing a tradition with your Western values or something. Yeah. Look, that there is something true that exists outside of our experiential phenomenal reality, and that thing that exists is eternal. And as time goes by, it emanates into the world and manifests differently through different epochs in history. I don't know how that idea suddenly became right-wing, but I'm not like a strict Gunonian perennialist, but I'm a soft perennialist, and I definitely think there's something to it. And, you know, seeing Neoplatonism and connecting things with Neoplatonism with Eastern things, I think is a good project. And to a degree, that's what people like Blavatsky and Gurdjieff were doing and are doing. That was kind of like the projects they kind of were doing. Another guy says, sorry for sidetracking you, but while we're at it, does such practice as Neigong have like also certain points one can obtain, such a third eye, or in Taoism? Okay. That's a fucking big question that I'm going to go on a massive rant on, so maybe we'll save that for a Q&A. From what I understood, building the body from those practices, you would like probably get such abilities and stuff. Yeah. Fundamentally, it's not that you are moving the energies up your spine. It's those practices, you're basically compressing energy into yourself. And then it's like, what, you know, like a French press coffee thing, you know, when you like press the coffee beans down, you press it down and then the good stuff comes up. It's like you press this energy, this raw energy within yourself, and by compressing it, it kind of forces it into your nadis, into your system, and then it awakens the kind of system. But there's different ways of doing it. That's how the Taoists do it. In Tibetan Tantra, it's completely different. Tibetan Tantra is different from the yogic Kundalini and the Taoist system. In the Tibetan Tantra, it's like, now, someone who knows Tibetan alchemy can probably describe it better than me, but in that one, they have the 5 different airs that flow within the body. And the whole point isn't that you have Kundalini at the base of your spine, but it's more that there are drops of Kundalini that are throughout your body, and they're sealed there. And by circulating the 5 airs through the body, 1 drop of Kundalini can activate and start to move. And it's like your nadis are all closed and clogged up, but by circulating continuously, that little drop, it's like diamond cutting through diamond, will eventually open some nadis, and then it will hit another drop and slightly get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then like eventually the engine begins and you become a being of fire, and you know, it all awakens. Whereas, you know, the yoga system is you focus on the Kundalini and get the central channel working, and then you come into that the extra nadis open up. Like, you know, they say in yoga systems, they talk about chakras in the legs and the feet, but you don't awaken those chakras because they have animalistic, you know, all of your past lives when you're an animal are sealed in those chakras. So first you awaken at the base of the spine, because that's the first chakra where human consciousness begins, and then you work up the spine, and then you kind of go back down and awaken in the legs and that whatnot. Whereas in the West, in olden traditions before Kundalini came, in the West they say initiation begins at the feet. There's all these different, a lot of different ways of doing it, shall I say. Also, Magnus, if you want a Western way, there's the Koenig work. The Koenig alchemical work, which is beginning nowadays, which we're kind of refinding. Blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts on the instructions or transmutation and purification methods of the Secret Golden Flower? Is it for beginners? Yes. I mean, the Secret of the Golden Flower, I'm not sure if you would describe it as something for beginners, but it's a foundation text. Secret of the Golden Flower is the first text in Taoism that's specifically internal alchemy. And fundamentally, all it teaches is a breathing exercise, but it also takes you through that process, and it tells you what happens. So you just do that one exercise, and if you do it properly, you should experience this process. So yeah, go for it. It's actually a book I want to get to rereading, but I got a bunch of other stuff on the back burner. Another guy, the power of that question was too strong for the live stream. Yeah, so I went off on it anyway. 5 airs sounds like 5 poisons from Taoism, lol. No, I mean, there's bunches of different 5s as well. The 5 poisons is also in Tibetan Buddhism. The 5 poisons also need the 5 cures. Sorry for Koenig work. Let me just spell it. Koenig work is spelled like this. So in the Rosicrucian movement, there are some big boys who have kind of refound kind of like the origin of a lot of Rosicrucian stuff. Kind of goes back to this early kind of, it's like an esoteric Christian tradition that survived and still is around, actually. So even like Westerners who convert to Buddhism always have this thing where it's like, yeah, but you don't have real lineage. And it's like, well, guess what, motherfucker? There's a living real lineage alive, and it's got real masters and real kind of awakened people. But anyway, secret chiefs and whatnot aside, the Koenig work is real, a real form of Western alchemy. You know, it's cloaked in a lot of Christianity and things like that, but look, if you want to... It's connected to Jakob Boehm, it's connected to Paracelsus, maybe a little Meister Eckhart. It's kind of German mysticism, native German mysticism combined with alchemy. And then Rosicrucianism is basically that, mixed with Italic Renaissance Hermeticism. Anyway, rant sidetrack aside, let's try and make it to the end of this chapter. Atlantis, come on guys. We're talking about the secret third thing in Atlantis. The need for these special buildings was again understood, and they were actualized by a very sensible Hebrew king named Solomon. Hello! So, the Atlantean buildings were also in ancient Israel? And that special building which this sensible Hebrew king decided, first of all, to construct, and which still continued long afterwards among his subjects, was called Tat Shan Nan. They somewhat resembled the Ginkokrostini, such as had existed in Atlantis, and beings also of the female sex were put into them, and they were obliged to remain there during the whole of their menstruation. See, we need to make more retreat centers for women, where men aren't allowed to go and it's just ladies. Just when your lady gets on the blob, send her to send her to camp. Israel and Atlantis truth. No. He's saying, like, after Atlantis, Israel still had a little bit of the Atlantean knowledge. On the blob, sorry, that's my British coming through. That's how they talk in Birmingham. King Solomon hastened then to establish this custom because during his wise reign, he had often constated that when beings of the female sex experienced a state of menstruation, their character became for the surrounding beings, especially for their husbands, not only intolerable, but in respect of the resulting inconsistent relations and dealings with other beings like themselves, even psycho-organically harmful. And he therefore decided without delay to promulgate a severe law for his subjects, according to which special isolated buildings were compulsorily constructed near every populated district, in which they confine the beings of the female sex for the whole duration of their said state. Yep, ladies, we're sending you to camp. Period camp. For your period cramp. I even chanced to read the lore he promulgated. In this lore, it was... this is a chapter on war, and he's talking about women's periods, bro. This is crazy. In this lore, it was said, among other things, that women, during their menstruation, are, in the consecrated sense, unclean. And that during these periods, for others, and especially for their husbands, not only to touch them, but to speak with them, is the highest sacrilege and a crime. Don't speak to women. Gurdjieff. Confirmed. Irish have Atlantean knowledge as well. Yes, they do, Morgoth. An unclean force or evil spirit will enter into those husbands or into men in general who touch or even speak with them during this period, in consequence of which there would be among men in everyday relations and affairs only misunderstandings, quarrels, and enmity. The last statement of this great earth sage, King Solomon, remains today an unchangeable truth. So Gurdjieff actually really liked King Solomon. Interesting. And indeed, at the present time, this also is one of the numerous causes, thanks to which, in the general complexity, ordinary existence has already become nonsensical. In the extreme, for the beings of your planet, in the contemporary Earth beings of the female sex, there is still further increased during these states that specific property of theirs, which was acquired in them during recent centuries, and which they call hysteria. And during this state of theirs, they bring surrounding beings, particularly their husbands, to this, that the latter become like those beings there of whom our great Mullah Nasruddin says, the purpose of their existence is to be the victims of leeches. Oh. And indeed, it is only because the contemporary beings of the female sex go about freely during menstruation that many contemporary beings of the male sex not only can never have good and kind relations with each other, but on account of this very frequently become genuine what are called later repenting blasphemers. Interesting. This favorable custom, created by the wise King Solomon, existed among the Hebrew people for a considerable time, and would certainly have been spread all over the earth also, had it not been for that specific property of the beings there, about which I have also already once told you. Namely, when this Hebrew people, as usually happens there, had fallen from their greatness and were despised and persecuted by the beings of other communities, who on account of the impulses of jealousy and envy of all those higher than themselves, hated her in the days of her greatness and power, which impulses had already become inherent in three-brain beings of your planets. Then these beings of other communities, of course, also despised all the indeed good customs which they had already had. Alas, alas. That is why this good custom was not only not spread further, but gradually also owing to their other characteristic properties, which I have already sufficiently explained to you. That is to say, owing to the fact that this Hebrew people had themselves fallen under the influence of other communities. That's interesting. It implies that the Hebrew community had some connections to Atlantis through Solomon. Through communities which had become great and had followed their examples, this good custom began to be despised and was ultimately forsaken and forgotten by the very founders themselves. I mean, nowadays, if we just locked women up for a part of a month, that would be seen as very unfeminist, but really it's the most feminist thing to do. Women just want to be left alone.
Yes.
At the present time, this custom exists there only among a very small community to be found in the mountains of the Caucasus and bearing the name Kevsuri. Just those same Kevsuri who give many scientists there no sleep because of the problem of the origin of that small community. Atlanteans. So Atlanteans exist in the Caucasus. Atlantean remnants in the Caucasus confirmed. As regards your favorites also destroying the good customs for ordinary existence already existing on their planet and attained by their ancestors, we must, like it or not, again express our condolence with poor nature there, who must always be adapting and readapting herself. And concerning a misfortune of this kind, for their nature, our very dear teacher, the peerless Mullah Nassereddin, has also some very wise sentences, namely in similar misfortunes he sometimes says, "Eek, if you're unlucky in life, you may even be infected by your godmother with venereal disease." Oh, Jesus. Or sometimes he also says, "Oh, you unfortunate creature, your mother must have sung an Armenian ballad while you were being born." What does that even mean? Even the interpreter of Russian wisdom, Kushma Proctor, hold on. This is not a real person. This is not a real person. Come on. What is this? What is this? Yeah, that's right. That's right. Lies, Gurdjieff. Lies. Okay, so even the interpreter of Russian wisdom. So the Russians have wisdom, and this person who doesn't exist has a good saying. The unluckiest among us is the fir cone, because every Makar stumbles over it. Hold up. Hold up. This isn't a thing. Makar, what is this, man? What is this, man? Thank you for amazing content. Q&A soon, please. Yeah, okay. I'll set one up for Easter. Easter Q&A, baby. Let's go. Thank you, Greg, for the $4.99. We just got our first 2 donations on the chat, by the way. As we can see, there's a goal in the chat for a group hug through the internet. Ultra gay. If we all want to get gay in group hug, donate now. We're almost a quarter of the way there. We've already got 2 donations. We've already got two donations. We're just 3 donations away from a group hug, guys. Let's make it. Thank you, Greg. Now, I don't even know what that I don't even know what this unluckiest among us is. The fur cone. Kimberly, yes. Yes, Kimberly. Thank you. That's 3 donations. 3 donations, just 2 more, and we'll be a quarter of the way there, guys. Quarter of the way there. Donate now for a group hug. I repeat, this unfortunate nature. Tyler, donating for a group hug. Thank you, Tyler. We're just, guys, we are 1 off. 1 donation off. Being a quarter of the way there. Guys, guys, hug on the way, basically. Hug on the way. I repeat, this unfortunate nature of the planet Earth must continuously and without respite adapt herself to manifest as always, otherwise, and yet again, otherwise, so as to remain within the common cosmic harmony. So yeah, we mess up Mother Nature so hard. She just continuously has to adapt to us. But you know what really helps Mother Nature? Group hugging. Donate now to get a quarter of the way there. Just $3.99. Well, actually, I have to. $5 is the minimum donation. In order that you may represent to yourself and understand well in what way unfortunate nature there so adapts herself that there should be attained what is called the equilibrium of vibrations required from this planet for the common cosmic harmony, I shall explain to you, only about one fact, which is just now being actualized there, and is to say subsequent to that process of theirs, which they called the World War. It was plainly owing to the fact that during the said process, what is called poison gas was invented by beings called Germans, and what are called special rapid-fire machine guns by beings called Englishmen, that the amount of rascuanos or deaths unforeseen by nature took place on this occasion, and in a far greater quantity than was then required by her, or as the candidates for Hasnamus there, namely the commercial businessmen, would say overproduction occurred in respect of the deaths of the 3 brain beings required there. Fine Free Fine donated $10. I wish this counted too. This goal is not logical. It does count, actually. That's 5. Guys, we made it. We made it to a quarter of the way there. Just 5 more donations and we'll be halfway to a group hug, guys. Guys. We're halfway to halfway. We made it to a quarter of the way there. We can do this, guys. Group hug. Thank you, but thank you, Fine Free, for your $10 donation. So yeah, this is interesting. So the World War happened because nature wanted to restabilize herself, but because of the inventions of the Germans and the English, too much death happened, and the nature was like, oh god, gotta restabilize. Babies everywhere. In consequence, nature there had again to begin from the moment to puff and blow, and as is said there, jump out of her skin in order to correct this unforeseen and adapt herself once again in a corresponding manner. Poor nature. Poor nature. This time, from what I myself learned for certain during my last stay there, and also from the intimation communicated to me by Ethereum, great nature there is evidently about to increase for future times the birth rate of other forms of beings there. I noticed in the cities Petrograd and Tiflis, situated in the large community Russia, of which community more beings perished than of any other during that world war of theirs. That kind of quadruped being, which as a rule never appeared there, namely the quadruped beings, which hate people and which are called wolves, were already prowling the streets. Ah, Fimbulwinter, the wolves take over. We're almost there, guys. We're almost to the end of the chapter, and you know what? We're almost to the end of this like stretch goal as well. If we just get a couple more donations, we'll be halfway to a group hug. In the information communicated to me by Ethereum, it was said, among other things, that in the same large community Russia, the birth rate of beings of the kinds of rodent called mice and rats had increased to such an unprecedented extent that at present time there are beginning to devour most of the stored provisions of the beings of that said community. It was further conveyed in the same Ethereum that the power-possessing beings of the community Russia had applied to the beings of other European community to undertake the destruction of the existence of those small beings, mice and rats, which had multiplied among them, in return for which they promised to pay them as much money as it would cost. Just release snakes into the sewers, guys. What could go wrong if you just let flesh-eating snakes into the sewers to eat all the rats? Though a temporary reduction of the numbers of these poor rats and mice may be obtained by the various means at the disposal of those specialists in the destruction of the existence of others, yet the beings of the other communities will possibly not quite consent to do this gratis, to pay in money, however. This is the beings of that Russia, who promised it will, of course, not be able to do, since it might cost them in money much more than their last war. Jesus. Hugs and nugs. 420 believes that. From Tyler. Thank you, Tyler. Guys, we made it. We're over a quarter of the way there to the goal. We can do this, guys. We can do it. And to get money from the same sources from which they drained it during the Great Process, as our dear Mullah Nasruddin says, as to this nothing doing, even a donkey can understand that peasant flesh costs nothing in peacetime. Yeah. Having said this, Beelzebub became silent, and began to look expectantly at his grandson, who, as if talking to himself very sadly in a tone full of despair, said, "How will it all end? Is there really no way out at all? Must these unfortunate souls, who were formed on that unfortunate planet, really remain eternally unperfected and endlessly coated into various planetary forms and everlasting toil and moil on account of the consequences of the properties of that accursed organ Kundabuffer, which, owing to the reasons extraneous to themselves, was attached to the planetary bodies of the first 3 scented beings of that ill-fated planet?" Because remember, all of the problems on this planet started not because of humans, but because of the angels. The sacred order attached the Kundabuffer to us and messed up. "Were then in that pillar upon which, as it were, our whole megalocosmos rests, and which is called justice." Yeah, where then is the pillar upon which, as it were, our whole megalocosmos rests, and which is called justice? So this is, Hassien's getting really into it, like, no, this cannot be. Something is wrong here, because during the whole time of my existence, not once has a single doubt ever crept into me as to the existence of objective justice. All I have to do is just to clarify and understand why. Man, Hassien's getting really upset about our situation. At any rate, from this present moment, the aim of my existence shall be to understand clearly why the souls arising in these terrestrial 3-centered beings are in such an unprecedented, terrifying situation. Yeah, I feel the same, Hassien. Well, Hassien is us. Remember, it's Beelzebub's tales to his grandson, and Beelzebub is Gurdjieff. And so he's realizing that, you know, the people he's teaching may not have it together and the Gurdjieff movement might not continue. But this book is left to us, not his children, but his grandchildren, the people who come in the later epochs. Gurdjieff is teaching us directly through this book. So if you're feeling how Hassien's feeling, yeah, then you've got the book. You've got the book inside you, even if only on a subconscious level. $5 for Hassien voice. Hassien, the original Oliver Twist. Thank you, Fine3. Having said this, Hassien, full of melancholy, drooped his head and became sadly thoughtful. And Beelzebub looked at him with a very strange look. Strange because in this look his love for Hassien was very clearly seen. And at the same time, it could be seen, it could be sensed that he was nevertheless very glad that his grandson was experiencing such a depression. This silence continued a fairly long time. At last, Beelzebub heaved a deep sigh, with, as it were, the whole of his essence, and spoke to his grandson in the following words. Yes, my dear Hassian. It's no longer my boys, it's Hassian. This is interesting. Certainly, there is something not quite right here. But if nothing could be done for the beings of that planet, by that being who now already has the reason of the sacred Podkulad. Last page, baby. Let's go, Tyler. Thank you, Tyler, for the donation. And guess what? That's 8 donations. 2 more. 2 more. And we'll be halfway to a group hug, guys. Halfway. Halfway till I grab the camera off of my computer and just... let's go. So we got some Puklade. So some guy came and achieved the sacred being reason of Podkulad and is one of the first assistants of our endlessness in the government of the world, namely the very saintly Ashiata Shaimash. So even Ashiata Shaimash came to help us. If he could do nothing, what then can we expect? We beings were the reason of almost ordinary beings. You remember the very saintly Ashiata Shaimash then in his deliberations under the title, The Terror of the Situation, said, if it is still possible to save the beings of the earth, then time alone can do it. So all that has been done, That's why the beings don't descend on our planet anymore. They're just like, we did everything, bro. We did everything. It's now up to us. Only we can continue the work. We can now only repeat the same in regard to this terrible property of theirs, of which we have just been speaking, namely their periodic processes of the destruction of each other's existence. We can only say now that if this property of terrestrial beings is to disappear from that unfortunate planet, then it will be with time alone, thanks either to the guidance of a certain being with very high reason, or to certain exceptional cosmic events. Come on, moon collision. Having said this, Beelzebub again began to look at Hassian with that very strange look. That same strange look. And there we are. Chapter 43 down. Chapter 44 begins. Which will start again next week, but 44, in the opinion of Beelzebub, man's understanding of justice is for him, in the objective sense, an accursed image. Oof. Take that, can't. We did it, guys. We did it. We made it to the end of the chapter. Thank y'all for coming. Thank y'all for staying. Thank y'all for the questions. We did it. I think I need a cigarette. Alrighty, we did it, guys. I'll see y'all again next week, same time, same place, and we'll begin chapter 44, Beelzebub on Justice. Thank you all for coming along again. Thank you for coming along. Thank you for donating, even though we didn't get that group hug in. It'll be guaranteed over to only time will tell. See y'all next week. See y'all next week. Bye.